Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Thinking Ahead with Sourya. Today, we're joined by Tom Lawler, Vice President at Lawler Construction in Cleveland, Ohio. He started working at Lawler full-time in 2017, and he's been working to improve his systems and further existing relationships while helping create new ones. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, to start off, could you just introduce yourself in a few words? Who are you and what do you do at Lawler Construction?
Absolutely. My name's Tom Lawler, Vice President at Lawler Construction. Like you mentioned, been here since 2017. I actually worked as a laborer in high school on summer breaks, winter breaks, stuff like that as well. Part time, going back probably as early as 2010. But I'm 31, born in '94, U.S. grad 2012, Kent State grad, I think 2018. Been here for 8, 9 years now, and got married last year, so life is looking grand here.
That's amazing. So, I think a lot of our listeners are going to be from US and we're actually from the same school. So I think that's really interesting to see how one high school can have people from so many different paths. So for students who don't really know much about construction careers, like what is a day in your life? Yeah, what does a day in your life generally look like? Like where do you start? Where do you end? What's your favorite part of the day? Something just happened. I can't hear you anymore.
Can you hear
Okay,
me?
yeah, now it's good. Now it's good.
Sorry about that. My espresso machine was shutting down, and
Okay,
it probably overrode. Um,
it's fine.
no, but that's a great question. The typical day for me, it's interesting. In my field, it can be any one of two or three different kind of typical days. In my line of work, we have what I like to think of two phases of work. You have your pre-construction and sales kind of side, and then you have your management and operations. And being a business owner as well, there's kind of a third leg. So I kind of think of my job as a three-legged stool. Operations, sales, and then the third one is, management of the internal structure of the company and making sure the company is strong as well. But a typical day for me, I try to get in early, check my emails. I always check in with my labor crews first thing. If I got guys on site, I always check in with my foreman or superintendent, make sure we got everybody showing up and everything's going smoothly to start the day. After I get through emails, I typically have some type of plan for the days. Some days I'm booked with meetings. Some days I'm visiting my job sites. And some days, I'm planning to work on new bids or sales opportunities. So it can kind of shift between those just depending on the week or month. Sometimes I'm
Mhm.
bidding a lot, and sometimes I have quite a few projects going and I'm not bidding quite as much, but it's kind of an ebb and flow.
That's really amazing. So it's not just the construction part of it, but you get to work with people on a regular basis. You get to speak with them and that business side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm speaking all day. When I was a little bit younger and in lower capacity roles, I had more alone time where I was working on tasks and completing deliverable materials. Now, at the level I'm at now, I do some of that at a high level. I still have strong management over all of our scheduling and a lot of our final estimating. Most of my job is communication, talking to people, relationships with
Mhm.
clients, relationships with, our laborers, our employees, our subcontractors, our vendors, and especially being a small business, our reputation and relationships is kind of what we thrive on. So absolutely, my job is talking to people. Absolutely.
Right. So just a quick question. Do you own the company? Because you call yourself the vice president. I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm a principal. So my dad started the firm in '06.
Hmm.
For him, it was a lifestyle company, and I decided to join at some point when I was in college. I bought into the ownership in 2021, I think. We're transitioning roles here in a few weeks, January 1st. I'm stepping into, his president role, and he's going to start stepping back a little bit more.
Nice.
So yeah, we're kind of in a transitional period right now, but yes, I will become the president, and I don't know exactly what the percentage ownership is, but him and I are working through a buyout.
I think that's really cool. So I just wanted to ask, so then your company, what does the company do specifically? What service are you providing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so Lawler Construction, construction is kind of a broad term these days. Historically, we're a general contractor, meaning when there are contracts out there to build something, maybe to design and build something. We'll be the prime contractor, and we can go out and get subcontracting vendors to put together an entire package for a client, so they don't have to deal with 20 different points of contact.
Mhm.
I'd say one of the main things we do. General contracting has evolved into what we like to call construction management, which is another way of delivering a construction project. It's a little bit more involved than just a typical general contractor. Construction manager oftentimes gets involved with the other consultants and the client earlier on in the process, meaning, you know, before, these 90s, before construction managers were a lot more prevalent on anything but large projects, an owner would go to an architect who would engage engineers, they would design a project, and then they would put it out to bid, and you would try to get 3, 5 general contractors to bid it, get a competitive quote, choose one, and proceed.
Mhm.
That had some delays in it. Obviously, you had to wait for design to be done and then wait for the bidding to complete, and then you can start work. Construction manager allows you to cut down on that process. They can get involved and consult with the designers, architects, and engineers a lot earlier on. That affords you the opportunity to be procuring long lead item materials, planning for the project, and maybe doing early phases of work before design is totally complete. So it allows the client to save a ton of money and time while engaging professionals earlier on. So we do general contracting, construction management, and then we're also carpenters. We're signatory with the International Brotherhood of Carpenters here. There's a local union in Cleveland. So we do self-reform, all kinds of carpentry labor. That's from rough in-wall carpentry, finished carpentry, millwork, stone, doors, hardware, all kinds of stuff, ceilings, walls, you name it, we do it.
So I think, okay, so that's really cool. So what I'm understanding is that when you want a construction project, there are tons of different services involved. And what your company is providing is a single point, person of single point contact, where that person manages all of those services and provides almost like peace of mind and more time for the customer to do essentially other things relative to that project.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, and it's frequent so we do work with some clients that do construction regularly. You can imagine some businesses are expanding and constantly, need to perform renovations or build new structures. But there are also clients that we work with that I like to call one-offs. They're not doing much construction across their entire lifespan of their operation. They had some type of emergency or event or expansion that necessitates it. And so they're not what I'll call sophisticated, not to demean a client like that, but they're not sophisticated in construction, right? Those types of clients really rely on a service like ours because they're not as well versed in what we do, how it gets done, how to get it done fast. And so those are the clients that I think, my type of firm really services a lot better. There are obviously, like I mentioned, firms that do it regularly and are more kind of in step with how we operate. And so that's where we get a little more competitive with the other firms like us.
Because you're essentially providing the experience, because the experience.
Yeah, so some of those clients that don't have to, go through a construction process regularly, they don't know where to start. Do I start with the city? Do I start with an architect? Do I start with a builder? They have no clue a lot of times. And so they need help being guided through that process. And then, you got to go through permitting and there's all types of regulations and restrictions with city and zoning and planning. You got to make sure you're not doing those things improperly or you can get fined. So yeah, it's just important to have somebody with experience and knowledge in the industry that can guide you through that process. And sometimes that's an architect, but there's a role in construction. It's called owner's rep. It's an owner's representative. They essentially they act in the stead of a client they can even be involved. If I'm a prime contractor for that client, the client might not want to work even with me directly. So he would appoint an owner's rep. And that's who I work with on the project while they're representing the owner's interests. So again, another option, it's going to cost them a fee for that consultant, but another option for a client if they're focused on their operation and can't deal with the construction.
Would you say it's almost like a lawyer, like representing their client?
Yeah, it can be. Quite frankly, owners' representatives are typically folks like myself. They're construction executives who have a relationship with that client, but maybe aren't going to perform the actual construction work, maybe because of that relationship. However, that relationship allows them to maybe protect their interests by representing them. We also, I guess that's one I forgot to mention. We also provide owners rep services. So we've had clients that we worked for in the past that had, a different type of work than we do, reach out to us and we represented their interests just basically in meetings with their design consultants and their builder, making sure things were going smoothly on schedule and everybody's, getting paid properly. So those types of things. But, that's a fee-based service. I don't love that kind of work because that's not the part of the business I like. I like the problem solving aspect of construction and the relationships aspect and managing the company. So I don't chase owner's rep work, but my dad, who has been doing it for more than 40 years, it's a perfect role for him.
So, okay, so that's amazing. And you said you really love the problem solving, right? I want to talk more about it. Like, could you expand on what parts of problem solving do you generally see a lot in your line of work?
So there's a couple. I mean, I would say my job mostly is problem solving. There's two main ones. I'd say there's the problem solving, the people aspect. So we like I mentioned, we run carpenters, and so when you have a labor crew, inherently there's going to be issues on site. People have attitudes and pride, and they think they know how work should go. So there's conflict. Sometimes we have to work through those types of problems. Sometimes there's language barriers, with people that we're working next to. Construction sites can be dangerous, so we always got to be safe. And sometimes the contractors next to us are the ones not being safe, and we have to figure out, hey, how do we communicate this properly without causing drama and blowing up the job site? So sometimes those are the problems. Other problems are, when I'm bidding and I'm looking through a new set of documents, I'm finding gaps or inconsistencies. That's risk in your job, right? So on a bid, I'm submitting a quote to do a scope of work that's designed in project documents. At the end of the day, I'm liable for all the scope in there. If I don't understand something, I need to resolve that. There's something called
Mm,
RFIs in construction, request for information or request for interpretation. So during the bidding process, that's, one of your opportunities to identify questions, problems, areas of conflict in the documents, put it in writing to the designers, the architects, and ask them to provide additional detail or information to clarify. If you don't do that and you end up winning the project, again, you're liable for whatever's in there. And when
right.
it comes time to come and build it, if you don't understand what you're doing, there can be issues. And so, again, that problem solving on the operation side, if you miss something on the front end and you get out there and then you realize at last minute, what do you do? I could give 1,000 examples. It all comes back to relationships. When you're in a pinch on a job and you need to figure a way out, it's the people on the ground that are going to get the job done, not somebody like me in the office. So at the end of the day, I have to have a good relationship with the guys who work for me out there, and I have to trust that they're going to have my back.
So I think in this answer you just gave me, you talked a lot about leadership qualities, and that's something that I actually really want to talk about. And you said part of problem solving is really just managing people mostly. It's number one, trying to get people with different attitudes and different personalities to work together, trusting that those people will help you when you're in times of need. So, what is one leadership quality that you would suggest all people start practicing at US or at any high school?
Yeah, quite frankly, my biggest one, I would say, integrity, and with integrity, loyalty. Um, I think loyalty, that's one of US's, right?
Mhm.
Loyalty, responsibility, consideration. I hope I remember those right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say integrity. You need people to be able to trust your word. You need people to be able to trust that you're going to follow through on the things you say you're going to do. And when you've proven over and over again that you're a man of your word and that you're going to do the things that you say you're going to do, and when you tell somebody, hey, right when I get back, I'm going to go and send this. I'm going to make sure you have this tomorrow. When you get on site, this piece of equipment's going to be there for you. Jimmy's going to be there to help you set it up. Whatever it is that you're guaranteeing somebody, you have to follow through. Once you continue to do that on a consistent basis, that you start to develop a reputation. When things go wrong, tell on yourself. Be honest. You don't need to throw money away, but don't hide issues from your clients, from your designers. Put them on the table, address them openly, own your mistakes if they're yours to own. Have integrity. People will, be upset with the issue, but when the emotion from that goes away, I can't tell you. There's been a handful of jobs where, we made a mistake on. I think we had integrity with the way we handled it. And we developed that into a repetitive client from that because they gained trust in how we operate because of that. We're all human and can make mistakes. I always like to say it's not about the mistakes, it's about the way you go about resolving it, how you go about handling it. So yeah, I think integrity is the most important thing as a human being, as a leader, that you can exhibit in your actions.
So I think integrity really is important. And that's something I see at US every day, something that, I mean, generally everyone in my life is constantly trying to do. So what is one way we could practice this? So I know you gave an example, and that is true, to be honest about not shy away from telling on yourself, holding yourself accountable. But what is one way that, I could practice that right now in general?
Yeah, integrity is probably one of the hardest ones in the world because to have integrity, you have to have it with yourself, right? How do you look in the mirror, and be real with yourself about who you are and not feel shame or guilt for the decisions and actions that you make on a daily basis, right? If we're not being honest with ourselves, that's a little tougher to reflect on. But I think on a daily basis, what you can do is you can hold yourself to a standard, right? Like these are the values I believe in. This is how I believe I should be acting towards people. Your conscience tells you what's right and wrong, and we 1,000 times a day make that decision to go with or against our conscience, big or small. You know what I mean? Whether it's as small as helping pick up something that fell, or something as big as helping a less abled person across the street, or whatever typical trope you might come across. But the point is that to practice integrity, you have to practice doing the right thing when nobody's looking. That's probably told to all little kids, but it's so true. The more you do that, sometimes you're going to lose, right? Sometimes you're going to do the right things and it's still going to feel like things aren't going your way. But people will notice that you're consistent in your actions and in your transparency and your honesty and your follow through. And like I said kind of before, you'll develop a reputation for integrity. And I think that is what pays dividends, not only in your business and developing long-term business relationships, but being known as a high value person.
So hold yourself accountable to your own principles.
Yeah, everybody has to establish your own values, but at the end of the day, are you accountable to yourself? You can put a varnish on and go on to LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and look a certain way to everybody and be totally different. I think having integrity is being the same person everywhere. We can't, and it's exhausting, right? Can I be one person at home and put on a mask and go out and be, the type A, jolly, shaking everybody's hands, loudest guy in the room? That's tough to do. Not everybody can do that. And so I think it's important to be the same person in private that you are in public, whether that's working on yourself to get to a place where the person in private is someone you respect in public too. That's fine. Work on yourself, do
Mhm.
whatever you need to do, but don't be two people. You know what I mean? Believe it, find confidence in who you really are and then wear that everywhere. That to me, that's having integrity. That's being consistent with who I am. That's being real with myself about my value system, about who I want to be. And it's not putting on a fake face out in public to be who I think others want me to be.
That's amazing. Okay. So you not only have to be a leader to the people who work for you or under you, but you also need to teach them how to be leaders. How do you go about this?
Yeah. And I'm still young. I'm 31, but, I recognized early that I was going to be put into a leadership position soon. Obviously, my dad was the owner of the company. I went into construction eventually because I wanted to work for him and be in the business. After a few years, when he recognized and we agreed that I was on a good trajectory to reach a leadership position. I was honest with myself and him about some of my lacking abilities, skills, soft, less intangible things in terms of leadership and management. And we wanted to attack that. So I specifically wanted to attack and address that. I recognized things in my dad that I wasn't exhibiting. At the time I was probably 26, 27. I felt like things were moving fast for me. But so one of the things I did was we went out and found some consultants and had a few meetings to find the right one, but we wanted some training on, you know, transitioning a company from one generation to the next. And while we were looking for that, I actually found this place. It's called the Family Business Institute. They call themselves the FBI. So Family Business Institute, they specifically work with generational companies, and they put a program together for the, you know, whatever the younger generation is,
Mhm.
whether that's the second, the fourth, the 10th generation, whatever. And then we fly out to a specific location with a peer group, and it's all, this one was specifically geared towards construction, actually. And so it was a peer group in my industry of other young professionals who were going to be moving into leadership positions, you know, whether that was family owned companies or, you know, larger publicly traded companies. It didn't matter. So I had the opportunity to go for 3 years, 3 times a year, and spend, you know, 3 days with peer groups like this, being guided by, you know, older executives who maybe have experienced those types of transitions. And so we were guided through, how do you transition a company from a generation? What kind of skills do you need? How do you become a better leader? So we practice all those things. We workshopped. You know, I have probably 3 or 4 legal pads and notes from all those. But at the end of the day, you have to understand what you want to get out of things, and then you got to be willing to put in the work to get them. We found that place because we recognized deficiencies in my skills, recognizing I'm going to be moving into a leadership position, and we went and tried to address it. You know, I credit those sessions a lot. I grew both in maturity and understanding of the space around me. As you move
Mhm.
up as you move up in a leadership role, the space around you gets larger. And what I mean by that is, people are more distant from you. You know, if you're the intern in the office, people will joke with you and gossip and tell little stories. But as you start to move up and you have people working under you, you don't have friends in the office anymore.
Mhm.
Everybody respects you. It's always arm's length. So that's what I mean by you have more distance around you. I recognized through those workshops that that was actually happening to me, and I didn't even know it. So you have to recognize, hey, how do I move in this space that previously I was friends with everybody? I'm going to be their boss soon, or I am their boss now.
Right.
My behaviors have to change? So it's a lot to work through as a young man, and nobody has all the answers. I think, like I said before, the best thing to do is recognize your weaknesses and try to.
So it sounds like it ties back into integrity a good amount, right? It's just really not hiding those faults under the carpet, but addressing them and directly attacking them so you can be better prepared for the future.
Yeah, and what I think is, I'm a little bit old school in my thinking in terms of consistency, meaning if I'm in a leadership position, you know, I'm not probably not jumping companies every few years, right? And so if I'm going to be somewhere for the long haul, I have to maintain whatever reputation I've established. So I keep going back to kind of consistency, integrity. Yeah, it's all built on a value system, and typically a value system is, you know, one, two, three pillars holding up everything else. It's, these are the things that I try to do in my life and exhibit, and every single thing I do in my life comes back to it in some way. You know, whether I'm thinking about that consciously or not. But once you establish those values and you really work to be consistent about them, you'll find the rest of your life falls into place within that value structure. It's something I thought a lot about. I didn't think about this kind of stuff at all until I was moving into a leadership position, and then it became all consuming for me. At some point, this was the type of thing that I only thought about this stuff in kind of a larger macro sense.
Mhm.
And I kept thinking, how can I take these ideas and instill them in my actions every day? And that's the tough piece. I got to tell you, it's the tough piece, because you as a human being, you know what I mean? You have these habits and these reactions, and it's tough to try to curb some of that and guide your actions more towards what you want them to be. But I think that's what everybody struggles with as a human being, you know?
And that's what sets apart a good leader and someone who can be successful like you from people who aren't.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to discipline. I think a lot of people think about these things. Some people think more in depth about it, but do you have the discipline to be consistent? Being consistent is so tough. I mean, as a young guy, you guys are growing up. I remember getting up for high school, like just being consistent in waking up on time, being consistent in paying attention in class. Consistency is so tough, but consistency is backed by discipline. Are you getting your homework done on a consistent basis, right? Same thing for me. Am I getting through my regular work? Am I getting my billings done on time so that my accountant can do his job on time so people aren't up his butt? If I don't do my job consistently the right way every time, somebody else is going to be impacted by it. And
Mm.
that's what I don't want. I don't mind as much if I'm the only one impacted. So maybe that's where I can try to be a little lazier if I need a break somewhere. And I think inherently as human beings, we all kind of think that way. Like, hey, I'm going to take the easy way on stuff that only might hurt me or hold me back. But again, how much discipline do you have to fight that kind of attitude and get it done? I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what sets apart, I think, successful people from unsuccessful people is the discipline. And discipline, I think, comes from motivation. Everybody's going to have a value structure, whether it's a good or strong one, that's up for debate. But the discipline to attack your value structure and implement it on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, that's what sets people apart.
Right, right. So, okay, so my next question is now I want to. So I've learned a lot about what you do on a regular basis, some of the really good qualities you need. So a lot of my friends are probably listening to this podcast, and for all the high schoolers, when you were in high school, did you already know what you wanted to do? Or you mentioned that you decided you want to work here in college, but were you always, kind of leaning towards this line of work?
No, I mean, absolutely not. My dad was in construction since before I was born. And I guess always being around him and and everybody in it, it, it it never jumped out to me that, hey, this is the industry you should be in. I always thought I wanted to be a lawyer, probably since I was 8 or 9 years old. I think it started as a joke just because I was always arguing or debating with people about everything. But then I think I actually became attracted to the idea of, my job being to fight for people or issues that I believe in. And then I started excelling at English and languages. Everything kind of felt as I was growing up and in high school, like, hey, I want to be a lawyer. My skills go that way. This sounds like a great route to go. My grandpa was a lawyer. I got to college, took one law class, hated it, absolutely hated it. I might have even mentioned to you, but we had the class it was a pre-law where they brought in different types of lawyers every week. And I just remember, 2 or 3 weeks in thinking, and even by the end of the semester thinking, there was only one of 13 lawyers they brought in who seemed like a happy individual. And it is like the only thing consistent between these guys is they're all lawyers. So I don't know, that kind of scared me away. I didn't like how much everybody sounded miserable about law school. So I switched out of my pre-law program and I moved into sports administration and agency. I grew up, loving sports, being a
Mhm.
mild athlete. I wouldn't say I was a star athlete or anything, but loved sports, always loved competing and, felt like I definitely had some intelligence and some skill. I thought I wanted to do that. But yeah, it wasn't until, I don't know, halfway through my sophomore year, maybe even end of the sophomore year where I actually switched my major to construction management. So I actually dragged college out an extra year because I was going in the wrong direction. But I don't know, it hit me one day when I was down in Cincinnati at University of Cincinnati and in one of my sports admin classes. I think it was when they had an executive in for a college team and he was talking about was it struck me that most of the people I had heard speak about their careers in sports admin, they got their advancement to higher levels through relationships. You know, it wasn't hard for guys to go back home and become high school ADs or things like that, but to move up into college or professional it was all
Mhm.
relationship based. And I knew nobody in sports. And it kind of started to occur to me that it might be a very difficult trajectory towards success there. And so then that's when I started thinking about, well, how can I be successful, but also do something I love?
Right.
And it just hit me. I was like, well, you know what? My dad is in construction. He has his own business. He's going to shut it down when he retires. Maybe I should explore construction. I took a few construction classes. I loved them. I loved my professors in them. I liked all the students I was with. The first one I took was like a materials class. We made our own concrete. It took me back to my laboring days on site for my dad. So it just started to click, and I realized this is what I wanted to do. And the more I got into it, the more I realized, you know, construction is what you make of it. Yeah, are you working on building something? Yeah, but it really it's a relationships and problem
Right.
solving.
So, I mean, from what I hear, you're still a lawyer in that sense,
Yeah, I
in
mean,
your line of work.
I'm arguing with vendors, arguing with my own guys, debating the right way to do something. Yeah, I mean, I'm not in court, but I'm looking at contracts on a daily, maybe not daily basis, on a weekly basis. We issue contracts. We got to argue around terms. We have to settle on things. We have to include extra insurance clauses for certain projects, mitigate risk. I wouldn't say I do what a lawyer does, but in a lot of ways, we operate similar.
So, um, okay, so you said that you didn't exactly know where you wanted to go until sophomore year in college, right? For high school students, I'm pretty sure not a lot of people know what they're going to do either. What would you recommend doing so that they still keep all their doors open without accidentally, closing that one?
Yeah. That's a great question. And, I never really thought about that while I was in high school. But, it's the toughest thing in the world to do. Young men are still growing up and they want to have fun. They want to hang on to youth. They don't even know a lot of times they'll recognize how serious life is going to get when you're an adult. The best thing to do is to build relationships. That's one of the reasons I loved US. And when I look back on it, how I realized how fortunate I was, and not just US, but all the
Mhm.
schools that I went to afterward and some of the programs I was in. But it all comes back to relationships. I promise you. The way that you treat people is remembered. The way that you put yourself out there is remembered, and it will define you as a person. How do you put yourself forward? There's no great way except to be dogged in your approach and to be kind to people and be consistent. I'd say the same things over and over, but it is the truth, man. You have to be kind to the people around you to develop a reputation. And then you have to be consistent in that so that you don't develop a reputation as a two-face or someone untrustworthy. That's the only way to put yourself ahead. You got to work
Right.
harder than the next guy. It's the same values I learned from sports, right? I don't
Mhm.
know if you play sports, but if you're playing basketball and you're putting an hour in a day in the off season, how many other thousands, millions of kids out there are putting in the exact same amount of work as you? And do you have the natural born talent to just exceed them? Probably not. What percentile do you fall in? The 80th, the 90th, the 100th? Who knows? But you got to work harder than the next guy. So be consistent with how you treat people, build relationships, and even if things go a little bit sour, don't burn bridges. My best friend to this day, I met at US. Him and I, freshman year, were like enemies. We were always at each other's throats, and we kind of battled a little bit. We didn't like each other. He's my best friend. He was my best man at my wedding. Don't burn bridges.
Yeah. I think that really resonates with me, especially. It's definitely something I hear a lot every day. I think that was the last of my questions. So again, this has been awesome. I think we had a great conversation today, and it showed me not just about construction in general, but the qualities that you need for any line of work, but specifically the one you're in, these leadership qualities, integrity, being consistent. I think these are all really important things. And I'm so glad that you shared those with everyone today. So thank you again for coming on the podcast today. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks for having me, man. It was great to speak with you. Hopefully we can talk again soon.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
We'll see you.